what are the different technologies you have worked upon in your last recent project?
Talk about the recent technologies I am using. So we are using Java version 11, and on top of Java we are using Spring Boot framework, and for database side we are using Postgre, MySQL, as well as Couchbase DB, and for ORM tool we are using Hibernate, and also we are using JDBC template. Okay, and for Git versioning we are using GitHub, and for like metrics purpose we are using Grafana, and and for deployment purpose we are using Jenkins, and sometimes Docker and Kubernetes also. Okay, so I recently joined this organization, and it's been 1.5 years working with this organization. So there happened a lot of lift and shift. So I was there were a lot of transition happened from one project to another project. Yeah. But mainly these are the technologies I have worked here.
Okay. And in your project you worked on, you are using Spring Boot and Hibernate both.
Yes.
So how you plugged that? Any dependency you added? Or?
Yes. So actually, to interact with the database in object-oriented form, we can use any ORM tool, that is object relational mapping tool. So that actually maps your Java object into database tables and columns. And to enable that, we have added Spring Boot Starter Data JPA in pom.xml, and we have created the session factory object on top of that using the data source. So in the data source we have provided the connection information like the database URL and all, and yeah, so that is it.
Oh, oh. Okay, let's start with core Java.
Sure.
So can we override static method?
No, actually the term static means they are tightly bounded with their class itself, so you cannot override static methods, because overridden means you will have minimum two classes, and one class would have the one class will extend the another class. So in this phenomenon won't be happen in case of static methods, but yeah, this phenomenon is known as a method hiding, not method overriding, sorry, excuse me.
Okay. And can we inherit constructor?
Constructor basically are not inherited. So actually internally what happens whenever you have a constructor, so you can access the parent constructor using the super keyword.
What is multi-threading in Java?
Multi-threading is okay, so whenever let's say you have a task, and you want to allocate and you want the task to be completed using the number of cores available in your CPU, so you just want to distribute that task onto the available number of cores. In that purpose you can use you can take the advantage of multi-threaded environment, because if you are not taking the advantages of those cores available, that will run on the single core, and your performance will be slow. So your task is divided into multiple, you can submit your task to, and you can hand it over to the multiple workers, and they will perform independent their task, and finally they will combine the result.
Okay. What is the difference between join method and isAlive method?
Join method and what next method is called? isAlive.
isAlive.
Okay. So join method, okay, so what will happen, let's say join method will complete whenever, let's say you are having two threads, thread 1 and thread 2, okay, and both threads are running, and you are calling let's say you have created thread 1 and you have created thread 2, okay, and you have called the thread 1 join method. So what will happen, the thread 1 will finish its execution, and then only after completing that execution thread 2 will start its execution. So it will block this thread 2 execution. And is alive is used whenever if you want to check particular thread is alive or not. So there are some stages, right? So of particular thread, so new, runnable, ready, running, and terminated. So you can check whether this thread is alive or not using the is alive method.
Okay. What is synchronization in multi-threading?
Yeah, so the term synchronization is used whenever, let's say, you are having a shared resource and multiple threads are going to modify that resource or wants to access that resource. So what you can do, you can put some kind of lock so that only one thread can enter at a particular time to avoid inconsistency in the data, or that you can use synchronization. So basically you can put the lock on the particular method or particular block, or you can even put the lock on the class itself using synchronized keyword.
So you mean to say we can use synchronize with class, method, and block?
No. Synchronize cannot be used with the class, because let's say you have a method and that method static, and you have put the synchronize, so the whole class would be locked. This is what I mean to say. And if you want to restrict some block of code, then you can use a synchronized block over there to restrict the particular set of statement to be blocked. And if the method is not non-static, then that particular method will only be locked. So let's say if you want to boost some performance, so you should think about, if there are some set of statements are there that needs to be locked, then you should use the synchronized block over there. But if you find scenarios where you want to restrict complete method, then you can put the synchronized keyword with the method itself. But if the method is static, then it will put the lock on class itself.
What is exception in Java?
Okay, so exception, we can say a runtime, you know, what should I say? Runtime abnormal condition occurs in your program. So actually, we can handle the exception in Java. So there are basically two kinds of exception: compile time and the runtime exception, or we can say the checked exception and unchecked exception. So checked exception are those exceptions which are checked at the compile time. Let's say SQL exception or the class not found exception. These are the example of the compile time exception. But on the other hand, the runtime exception that occurs at the runtime, and the examples are the array index out of bound null pointer exception. These are the examples of the runtime exception. uh, and let's say you have a block of code, and let's say you have written a code of the line from 1 to 900. Okay, but we should not write that much code. But yeah, let's say you are having the 1 to 900 lines of code, and you just don't want to you just don't want to terminate the program, but just you have found any kind of exception in the line number 99. So what you can do, you can just wrap the line number 99 with the try and catch block, so that only that particular if anything happens bad with that particular line, then it will be handled by whatever the exception you have handled, return the logic.
So can we use multiple catch block after one try?
Your question is, can we have multiple catch? Is it
Catch after one try?
Yeah, you can have. But the thing is, you should have the parent should not come before the child. So you can have the child, then parent, then topmost parent.
Okay. But why should we use multiple catch blocks?
So multiple catch block we can use, let's say you want to handle multiple kind of error, and you want to have the specific error message to be given to the user. Let's say you are handling for user defined exception. Okay, so you can have multiple scenarios, there can be multiple scenarios by which you are getting into the catch block. But which particular catch block you are getting, you can just define that the type of exception over there, so that you can have the more user friendly, or we can say more debug purpose, we can use the block of catch blocks, so that you can have the more control, like more clarity on what went wrong with your program.
So why should we declare exception in method declaration?
Yeah, so let's say if you have declared an exception with the method itself, that means you don't want to handle that exception in that method. You just want to delegate that exception to the parent one. So parent would the responsibility of the parent method is to handle that exception, and if it is still not handling, then it will delegate it to the global exception handler, JVM in the sense.
What is anonymous inner class?
Anonymous class you are asking, right?
Anonymous inner class.
Yeah, so basically those classes which actually does not have their name, but yeah, they perform some kind of operations, so that's why the term anonymous is used. Yeah, I think.
Okay. So I mean, can we create an object using anonymous inner class?
Yeah, basically you can create just like we create the expression of
Why should we create anonymous inner class?
okay, allow me a minute. So let's say anonymous inner class you are asking. Okay, so actually you have one class, and I am thinking it through the lambda expression where they are also anonymous. So you have one class, and that class is uh, let's say you do not want, let's say, okay, let me give you one example. Maybe it's out of scope, but let's say you want to create a thread, okay, and you do not want to create a separate class to implement the runnable interface. What you can do, you can just create thread t is equals to a new thread, and inside that you can just using the lambda expression, you can provide the implementation of the run method. I think to avoid creating a new class, maybe I'm not sure on that.
Oh, so, I mean, the example that you gave, I mean, in that we can directly write new runnable and then anonymous in the class, right? I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
we override the run method
yeah, correct.
inside that.
Yes, so we do not need to create a new separate class,
It,
and
it is written. Okay. So, what does it return? I mean, when we write anonymous inner class, new runnable, and inside that, I mean, something we pass, right, in thread class constructor.
yeah,
So,
runnable. Okay, so you are asking in that way. Okay, so in that case, okay, so it will give you the instance of the runnable itself. Okay, so I think it will accept the
but runnable is inside.
yeah, runnable interface instance it should return, because the thread class will accepting the runnable instance, right? So you created multiple classes which are implementing the runnable interface, and you can create the object of that class, and you can pass along with the in the constructor of the thread class. So I think it will give you the runnable instance if in case of you are just implementing the run method present in the runnable interface.
Okay. What is difference between normal class and anonymous inner class?
Normal class and anonymous inner classes. Maybe I think the the term anonymous means they do not have their name, so we can use the lambda expression to express those classes. I think that could be the main difference, I think.
Okay. The differences.
Sorry, cannot hear you.
Any other differences?
Any other difference?
Normal class and
Okay, so
anonymous inner class.
yeah, inner class I have created, but anonymous inner class, this word I might have used somewhere. Okay, so any other difference? Let's say you have a physical class. Okay, in that case you can create the object of that class, but in case of anonymous class you can have instance but you cannot create the object of I think you can have instance, but I'm not sure you can create the object of that class.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not sure. Yeah.
What is string in Java?
String, you asking? string you are asking, right?
String, string.
Yeah. So string.
S.
Yeah, string is basically the data type in Java, and it's a class actually which is immutable class. Okay, so whenever let's say it is also thread safe, and it is most frequently used in Java. And we actually let's say we are having even the main method we are having, and we are taking the argument in the form of the string, because a string from the string it's very easy to convert into different types of data types. So we can cast into multiple, let's say integer float, integer character float, and kind of that types. So that's why main method is still accepting the string as an arguments, and string is thread safe. As I told, it's immutable class. And there is an important concept of string constant pool along with the string. So let's say you have created string s1 is equals to Mihir, and again string s2 is equals to Mihir. Sometimes it finds, so it won't create a new two objects, but instead it will start pointing to the original created object in the string constant pool, and it won't create a new object in the heap itself. Instead it will create that object into the string constant pool which is available in the heap itself. And let's say if you created again new object like string s3 is equals to new string Mihir, then again it won't create a new object in the string constant pool, but yeah, it will definitely create into the heap memory. So
Does string class implement any interface?
String think string class, yeah, it must have implement multiple interfaces, I think. So maybe because the string we can serialize, right? So I think it should have implemented a serializable interface also.
What is the difference between array list and linked list?
Sure. So array list basically okay, so array list basically uses the dynamic array as an internal implementation, whereas linked list uses the doubly linked list as an internal implementation. Okay, and the array list implements the list interface, so whereas linked list implements the list as well as the queue interface. So it has the both of the methods available in it. And index based access is provided with the array list, where it's not present in the linked list. And whenever you want to perform any kind of let's say searching and the searching operation, whenever you want to perform the search operations, then you should go with the linked list, sorry, with the array list. But whenever you want to perform updation operation, then you should go with the linked list. The reason behind is like it uses the dynamic array, so if you are updating or you are deleting something, then the extra shifting of that bits is overheaded in case of array list, right? So these are the differences, I think.
Okay. So how can we make an array list as a read only so that no one can add any element in there?
Okay. So there are two ways. One way would be collections dot unmodifiable collection, and you can pass that list as a parameter. So you can create any collection to the unmodifiable with that method. collections dot unmodifiable collection, and you can pass the instance of that list, so it won't be, it will be read only. And another yeah, I think so this is the way we can do to make it read only.
This is the method that collections provide, right? But I mean, any other custom way that we can make it as read only?
Okay, sure. So you want it to be read only, or let's say, okay, so let's say you have a list, okay, and you have added some values in it, and now you want this list to be unmodifiable, right? if you if you if you pass it to the
Mhm.
down methods or downstreams, okay. um, Actually, if you create okay, if you create the final, then it won't work because it will still be mutable. uh, but that list itself, it should not be. Yeah, I think what we can do in this case, um, I will create a custom class, okay, and I will maybe implement with the list interface, or I can, sorry, I will be extending that class with the array list class, and I will take the initial size of the list itself, and on the add method I will override that add method, and I will check if the size has reached, then I will throw the exception, like unmodifiable exception, and instead of the array list I will just use that my custom list. In that way also we can restrict the addition of the further elements.
No, but for that you have to create that class instance, right? Not array list instance. If you create one class and extend that array list
Yes, yeah, for that
and
you,
override add method,
yeah, definitely you will have to create the instance of that
instance
particular.
of the new class.
Yeah, that will require a new class, okay, but you want to restrict the number of elements added to that array list. So actually the array list is mutable in nature, and it will once it reaches to the its threshold, then it will increase its size by half internally, right? So one way to create the unmodifiable, that is collection dot unmodifiable collection, and another one is the read only, I think. How I create
Okay. What is an optional class?
okay, so optional classes is provided in Java 8. So basically, let's say if uh, we used to get the null pointer exception in our program, and uh, but optional, but it will force you to have a null check before it. So let's say is present, there is a method, once you can check its is present method, and then only you can write your operation to avoid the null pointer exception basically.
Okay. So if I give you one method, so
Mm-hmm.
can you write it in lambda expression?
Sure, I can try.
Using lambda.
Sure,
Let, uh, let me connect with laptop and share my screen.
sure.
I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I
Is
can
it
see.
visible?
Yeah.
Okay, this method.
Okay.
So you can tell me, I'll write.
Okay, sure. So let's say it's in a particular interface. So maybe you can just have the opening and closing bracket. Uh, just opening and closing bracket. Yeah, and inside that you can pass its two parameters, int a and int b,
Okay.
and then you have the arrow function. Maybe, yeah, yeah, and minus one. Yeah.
This one, right? Okay. What is a named query in JPA?
Named query, right? Yeah, so actually whenever you are dealing with with the database, so there are some situations where the HQL actually not supported, so we are having the multiple queries. So actually named queries and the native queries are there. uh, so native query is used whenever you want to write some custom query which is not in HQL but it's in a pure SQL format. And named query, I think I heard about it, but I think I haven't used it. I think named query, whenever you want to provide some maybe with the name like query parameter name, maybe for that we can use the named query. Allow me a minute, just a second, Amir. uh, yeah, sure. Named query basically used whenever you want to, I'm not sure on that first thing, but whenever you want to map some the placeholder with the name, I think we can use the named query, I think. I
Okay.
mainly been deal with the HQL queries and the native queries to call the stored procedure and all.
Mhm. Okay. And how we can create a custom repository?
Okay, so custom repository, to create the custom repository, actually you will need to create a class, and you have to mark that class as an bin. So you can annotate with the @repository, and you can extend with the JPA repository. Okay, and uh, you can have your own method over there, and you can have the implementation class that implements that interface, and you can provide the implementation over there. But the thing is, let's say you want to have the you just want to deal with the CRUD relation operation like create, update, delete kind of operation, then you can extend directly with the CRUD repository, because JPA repository internally extends the CRUD repository and paging and sorting repository. But if you don't need to perform all the operation, then you can simply extend, you can implement your class with the CRUD repository itself.
Okay. And what are the different types of bean scope in Spring Boot?
Yeah, so basically there are five types. One is a singleton. So this is the default scope of a bin, and
Mhm.
then you are having the session. So actually, HTTP for the HTTP session, for each HTTP session they are been invoked and they are been created, and then you are having the prototype. So when each time the bin will be created whenever it's requested, and then you are having the global session. So they are basically used for the portlet applications, uh, and I think you are having the singleton, prototype, and request. Yeah, so for the request, whenever for each HTTP request it will create a new instance of the bin. So by default scope of a bin is singleton. It's because to keep the performance in mind, maybe because the singleton will have the single instance in the Spring container throughout the application. And if it's not been singleton, then for each request, and we can see there are multiple requests and huge number of requests are coming to the controller side, and each time if it's going to create a new instance, then it might overflow with the memory. So that's why the default default scope is singleton, so that you can have the better memory in place.
Okay. So by default it's singleton, right? In
Yes,
Spring Boot.
yes.
Suppose I have one scenario where I have one service,
Hmm.
uh, service one,
Hmm.
and I have put annotation at the rate service one class. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And two controller one and controller two,
Okay,
and both of controller have a class instance of that service.
correct. Okay.
Provide service with both the controllers.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So you have
Okay.
injected dependency
So
of the same service in two different controller. This is what your question, right?
no. So I have two controllers, control one and two,
Uh,
and both inside both controllers, I have auto wire dependency uh, of service class.
mm-hmm.
Okay. So inside controller one, I have one service instance, and
Yeah,
also in controller two, I have one service instance.
correct.
Okay. So I mean, in this case, so I mean, two controller and one service. So how many instances created?
Only one. You will
Only
have,
one.
yeah, because whenever you will
No, in singleton, I understood. I mean, if I have one controller and one service, and suppose 100 requests comes, only one instance of service is created. But suppose I have two controllers.
mm-hmm. You have two controllers.
So
Yeah.
100 requests come to controller one, and another 100 comes to controller two.
Yeah.
100 comes to controller two. So how many? I mean, instances created?
Yeah, so basically what happens internally, let's say once you have allotted your class with at service, at that time whenever your application gets started, actually the that it will create the instance of your service, and it will put into your application context, sorry, your application Spring container. Okay. uh, and that is been shared with the multiple, so I think it won't create two objects. If you try to print the hash code, then it should print the same hash code.
Okay.